In the annals of computing history, few stories capture the David versus Goliath narrative quite like Cyrix Corporation. Born in 1988 in Richardson, Texas, this scrappy semiconductor company dared to challenge Intel's iron grip on the x86 processor market at a time when going head-to-head with the chip giant seemed like corporate suicide. Founded by former Texas Instruments engineers Jerry Rogers and Tom Brightman, Cyrix emerged from humble beginnings with just 16 employees and a revolutionary idea. Why should Intel have a monopoly on x86 compatible processors? The company's very name was a portmanteau of CI from cybernetics and Rix, meaning king, reflecting their ambitious goal to rule the budget processor market. What followed was an 11-year roller coaster ride of technical innovation, legal warfare, and ultimately, tragic defeat that would reshape the entire semiconductor industry. The genesis of Cyrix lay in the brilliant minds of its founders, who had witnessed firsthand how Intel's 8286 and 80286 processors were becoming the backbone of personal computing. Jerry Rogers, a former TI executive with deep expertise in semiconductor design, partnered with Tom Brightman, whose engineering prowess had been honed through years of developing advanced chip architectures. Their initial funding came from a modest $2 million in venture capital, a pittance compared to Intel's vast resources. But their strategy was deceptively simple: create x86 compatible processors that delivered comparable performance at significantly lower costs. The duo recognized that while Intel focused on pushing the performance envelope for premium markets, there was an enormous untapped demand for affordable processors that could power budget computers for price-conscious consumers and emerging markets. Their first major breakthrough came in 1989 when they successfully reverse-engineered Intel's 80387 math coprocessor, creating the FastMath 83D87 that not only matched Intel's performance, but actually outperformed it in certain calculations while selling for half the price. Cyrix's early success with math coprocessors provided the foundation and cash flow necessary to tackle their ultimate goal: full x86 processors. In 1992, they launched the CX486DLC, a hybrid processor that combined 386 and 486 features, followed by the groundbreaking CX486 SLC, which offered 486-like performance while maintaining 386-pin compatibility. This clever engineering allowed computer manufacturers to upgrade their existing 386-based designs without costly motherboard redesigns, making Cyrix processors incredibly attractive to cost-conscious OEMs. The company's engineering team developed innovative techniques like their proprietary 16 KB write-back cache design, which helped their processors punch above their weight class and performance benchmarks. By 1993, Cyrix had captured an impressive 15% of the worldwide x86 processor market, a remarkable achievement for a company barely 5 years old. Their success was built on a foundation of aggressive pricing, with Cyrix processors typically selling for 30 to 50% less than equivalent Intel chips, making them irresistible to budget computer manufacturers and clone makers. The mid-1990s marked Cyrix's golden age, as the company introduced a series of processors that genuinely challenged Intel's technological supremacy. The CX586, launched in 1995, delivered performance comparable to Intel's Pentium while maintaining compatibility with older 486 motherboards, creating an upgrade path that saved consumers hundreds of dollars. More significantly, the company unveiled the 6x86 processor in 1996. A chip that incorporated advanced features like out-of-order execution and speculative processing years before Intel implemented similar technologies in mainstream processors. Independent benchmarks showed the 6x86 outperforming Intel's Pentium in integer calculations and many business applications, a stunning achievement that sent shockwaves through the industry. Cyrix's processors were particularly popular in international markets where price sensitivity was paramount, with companies like IBM, Compaq, and Gateway incorporating Cyrix chips into their budget product lines. The company's revenue peaked at over $600 million in 1995, and they employed nearly 1,800 people across multiple facilities in Texas and Europe. However, Cyrix's rapid ascent was built on increasingly shaky legal foundations that would ultimately prove to be their downfall. Unlike AMD, which had secured a legitimate license to produce x86 processors through a 1982 cross-licensing agreement with Intel, Cyrix operated in a legal gray area, reverse engineering Intel's designs, and relying on cleanroom implementation techniques to avoid direct copyright infringement. Intel, recognizing the existential threat posed by Cyrix's success, launched a multi-pronged legal assault beginning in 1990, with the first of what would become dozens of patent infringement lawsuits. The litigation strategy was particularly insidious because Intel possessed thousands of patents covering virtually every aspect of x86 processor design, from instruction decoding to cache management, making it nearly impossible for any competitor to create a compatible processor without potentially infringing on Intel's intellectual property. Cyrix was forced to divert millions of dollars and countless engineering hours from product development to legal defense, hiring teams of patent attorneys and expert witnesses to fight cases in courts across the United States and Europe. The patent wars escalated dramatically in the mid-1990s as Cyrix's market share continued to grow, threatening Intel's pricing power in the lucrative processor market. Intel's legal team filed injunctions attempting to block the sale of Cyrix processors, launched investigations with the International Trade Commission claiming patent violations, and even pressured motherboard manufacturers to avoid designing systems compatible with Cyrix chips. The company faced the Kafkaesque situation where virtually any innovation they developed could potentially infringe on one of Intel's broad patents, many of which covered fundamental computing concepts that arguably should never have been granted patent protection in the first place. Cyrix fought back with their own patent portfolio and countersuits, but the asymmetric nature of the battle became increasingly apparent as Intel's legal expenses were a rounding error in their multi-billion-dollar budget while representing a significant drain on Cyrix's more modest resources. The constant threat of injunctions and the uncertainty surrounding patent litigation made many computer manufacturers hesitant to commit to Cyrix processors for fear of supply disruptions, undermining the company's ability to secure crucial design wins with major OEMs. Technical challenges compounded Cyrix's legal woes as the processor market evolved rapidly in the late 1990s. The company's 6x86 processor, while impressive in integer performance, suffered from significant weaknesses in floating-point calculations that became increasingly problematic as software applications grew more sophisticated. Their floating-point unit design, which prioritized cost reduction over performance, struggled with the complex mathematical operations required by emerging multimedia applications, 3D graphics, and scientific computing software. This deficiency was particularly damaging as Intel's marketing machine promoted benchmarks that highlighted floating-point performance, making Cyrix processors appear inferior despite their strengths in other areas. The 6x86MX, launched in 1997 as Cyrix's answer to Intel's MMX technology, improved multimedia performance but still lagged behind Intel and AMD offerings in crucial benchmarks that influenced purchasing decisions. Manufacturing partnerships also proved problematic, as Cyrix relied on external foundries like IBM and SGS Thomson to produce their chips, limiting their control over production costs, yields, and time to market compared to Intel's vertically integrated manufacturing capabilities. The beginning of the end came in 1997 when National Semiconductor acquired Cyrix for $550 million, a price that seemed generous at the time but reflected the company's deteriorating competitive position. National Semiconductor's management, led by CEO Brian Halla, believed they could leverage Cyrix's x86 expertise to create embedded processors for emerging markets like internet appliances and digital set-top boxes. However, the cultural integration proved disastrous as National's conservative corporate culture clashed with Cyrix's entrepreneurial spirit, leading to an exodus of key engineering talent, including several of the original design team members. The acquisition also coincided with Intel's launch of the Pentium 2 processor, which represented a significant technological leap forward that Cyrix struggled to match with their limited resources and fractured development team. National Semiconductor's decision to de-emphasize traditional desktop processors in favor of embedded applications effectively ceded the mainstream x86 market to Intel and AMD, abandoning the very market segment where Cyrix had achieved their greatest success. The final chapter in Cyrix's story unfolded with brutal swiftness, as the company's remaining assets were sold to VIA Technologies in 1999 for a mere $120 million, less than a quarter of what National Semiconductor had paid just 2 years earlier. VIA, a Taiwanese chipset manufacturer, acquired Cyrix primarily for their x86 licenses and engineering expertise, hoping to create low-power processors for mobile and embedded applications. However, by this time the Cyrix brand had lost virtually all market recognition and technical relevance, with Intel's Celeron processors having captured the budget market that Cyrix had once dominated. The irony was palpable. Cyrix's original strategy of offering Intel-compatible performance at lower prices had been successfully adopted by Intel themselves through the Celeron line, eliminating the market niche that had made Cyrix viable. VIA continued to produce x86 processors based on Cyrix technology for several years, but these chips were relegated to highly specialized applications with minimal market impact, representing a far cry from the days when Cyrix processors powered millions of computers worldwide. The legacy of Cyrix extends far beyond their brief moment in the spotlight, fundamentally altering the trajectory of the semiconductor industry and highlighting the critical importance of intellectual property strategy in technology markets. Their success demonstrated that technical innovation and aggressive pricing could challenge even the most entrenched monopolies, forcing Intel to compete on price and accelerate their development cycles to stay ahead of the competition. The legal precedents established through Intel's patent warfare against Cyrix created a template for using intellectual property as a competitive weapon that continues to influence technology litigation today. Perhaps most significantly, Cyrix's story illustrated the inherent contradiction in the semiconductor industry between the collaborative standards necessary for compatibility and the competitive dynamics that drive innovation and pricing pressure. Their engineers went on to influence processor design at AMD, Intel, and numerous startups, carrying forward the innovative spirit and technical expertise that had made Cyrix a legitimate threat to Intel's dominance. The company's ultimate fate serves as a cautionary tale about the importance of sustainable competitive advantages in technology markets, where technical excellence alone is insufficient without adequate intellectual property protection, manufacturing capabilities, and financial resources to survive extended legal battles. Today, as new companies attempt to challenge established technology giants in markets ranging from graphics processors to artificial intelligence chips, the Cyrix story remains relevant as both inspiration and warning about the possibilities and perils of taking on entrenched industry leaders.